What is the worst Nen ability in Hunter x Hunter? I've got my opinions on this, but mate, Nen is just so subjective. One person's worst ability could be another person's dream ability. So we've had to work really hard to find the abilities that are not only objectively the bottom of the barrel, but are in fact the bottom of the barrel on the bottom of the barrel tower in the world's worst barrel factory, the one infested with the cockroaches and such. And you know, I think we're starting off pretty strong with the one that gets you pregnant with other people's problems. Yes, that is a real Nen ability, and that is a fantastic description of it. This is referring to Hina's Nen Exorcism, which are not so great abilities in general, but this is an order of magnitude worse than most, as Hina can remove those pesky Nen curses, but depending on how strong said curse is, Hina becomes equally as bloated in what I would describe as a pregnant-some manner. Thus, you have quite literally become impregnated with someone else's problem, because that's the really janky thing about being a Nen exorcist. Once you've taken that curse away, the original target has no reason to help you. It's your curse now, have fun with that. I should also say that the other side of the coin has an equally as dirty embossed Queen Elizabeth on it, because Nen curses aren't amazing abilities to have either. A lot of times Nen curses are the most costly abilities. A great example would be Second Prince Camilla's Have-Nots. The final condition for them to activate their curse is to kill themselves, and in that case, and that case alone, I would rather be pregnant. The ability that Ikalgo has. Ooh, that's a good one. And by good, I mean bad, very bad. All of a sudden, pregnant is looking pretty good again. Living Dead Dolls, of course, allows our favorite marine life to insert himself into the corpse of a deceased individual and control them. As far as manipulation goes, I can certainly think of less morbid abilities that accomplish a similar result, but it's also an ability that would be completely useless unless you were an octopus. Or maybe not completely, but you'd have to insert yourself into something massive like an elephant or a whale, and I don't know if that's appealing to anyone, but not to me. I don't know, controlling an elephant might be pretty fun. They can run surprisingly fast, but I don't want to put myself into the elephant corpse. There's a big disconnect with this ability in me. Fun fact though, Ikalgo is an extremely rare chimera ant, as he is one of the very few who retains memories from both his former human life and his former animal life. And from the latter, Ikalgo carried over his dream of becoming a Chirotuthis
imperator.
That one. He wanted to become that one, which is better known as an emperor squid. I should have just said emperor squid. But this is far from the only morbid ability we have. That corpse disposal post-mortem Nen ability. So this is referring to Zombie Girl, a very recent ability used, past tense, by Misha, a member of the Jiu family. And what we see of it is a more powerful version, kind of like what Ikalgo does, taking control of a corpse and then manipulating it to present the illusion that said corpse is alive. And Zombie Girl then goes on to dispose of the body, never to be found again. Very, very useful for underworld operations, and that is our problem right there. I should not be using the word useful at all in this video, unless it's to say this ability is not useful, which I didn't do. But I guess I will say that if you're in a position where Zombie Girl is useful, then that's a pretty gruesome indictment of your life. But maybe there's a way to hack the ability for day-to-day use. Say you finished eating some chicken, you throw what's left in the bin, and then you summon Zombie Girl to dispose of both the chicken and the rest of the garbage at the same time. I mean, that doesn't actually work because you have to kill for Zombie Girl to activate, and you also need to be a member of the Jiu family, which doesn't exist in reality. So you know what, pretty not so great power. Binolt's Nen ability. I don't think I'm the type of person to walk up to people I don't know, cut their hair, and then eat it in front of them. This one was definitely the most referenced worst Nen ability, and I guess as a whole, the glob of people watching this video really do not want this power. Weirdly enough though, I think it's the best of the worst powers we've encountered so far, because after consuming the hair, Binolt gains biological insight into a target that we may not even have medical tests to detect. If he was a doctor instead of a serial killer, then this ability would be invaluable. It would make him a millionaire, perhaps even tens of millions, maybe hundreds. And some people have said that it would also be useful to a detective or law enforcement. But the issue is that Binolt can't just eat any old hair off the floor and analyze information, because the key restriction is that the hair needs to be cut with, and I quote, Binolt's favorite scissors. So bringing him into an established crime scene is no good. He would need to be there at the time of the crime. At which point his ability may be less than useful anyway, because he would have seen with his eyes who it was, and he probably would have murdered them himself. Let's be real here. Remembering that Binolt is almost absurdly powerful. Were he not injured by Bisky, he could have killed both Gon and Killua, the latter of which being a superhuman Nen-using assassin, and the former of which also being there. Back to detective work though, I'm not a detective, I've never worked in law enforcement, but I imagine it's probably not a good idea to eat the evidence. I really don't know if a jury would take that development too well. Well, you see, Your Honor, Detective Binault consumed the evidence, and his magical powers deduced that the culprit was Clarence Cockwaffle all along. And even in the Hunter x Hunter world with widespread acceptance of magical powers, you would need to be extremely skeptical. Because what if he's doing something like, I don't know, lying? Still, I think this is definitely the best worst ability so far. And to celebrate, here's Binault posing fabulously in the Hunter x Hunter Mabaga card game, going full JoJo there. The surfboard ability that Leol stole. It seems really situational. Seems that way because it is very situational. However, consider this. The ability was borrowed from an unseen character named Gratchan, and the ability itself is called Imamura, although in English it's dubbed as Surf's Up. It's an ability that can only be used on a rainy day, so that's pretty bad if you live in places like, say, Egypt, Chile, Antarctica, other dry places. But when it's raining, oh my god. Quite literally, because you essentially gain the powers of Poseidon, or Neptune, depending on if you're a Greek purist or a Roman sympathizer. Doesn't matter which one you pick, you are still a sea god. I think it is a bit confusing when watching or reading Hunter x Hunter, because Leol sort of gives the illusion that the water is conjured or even transmuted, but that's the reason for the restriction. It can only be used on rainy days because it can only be used to manipulate the rain. So its power directly correlates to how heavy the rain is. But even with a light sprinkle, it's pretty damn formidable, and one of my favorite exchanges during this Leol fight was Moral avoiding the whirlpool and saying, huh, now it's my turn. And then Leol's just like, you don't get any turns. No turns for you. All of the turns belong to me, Lion Man. I don't know why I like it so much, but I do. But I'm gonna go ahead and say that this Nen ability is not only the worst, but is in fact one of the most underrated in the entire series. Parallel Future. I think I would go insane if I had that ability. The anxiety of knowing the future, I can't handle it. That comment right there coming allegedly from Susan Wojcicki, CEO of YouTube. Oh, I have a letter from her actually, from Susan. Hang on, let me get it. Here we go, a nice special letter from our commenter here, Susan. I don't know if you can see it down the bottom there. There we go, look at that. Good to see you, Susan. Unfortunately, we've gone from one of the most underrated Nen abilities to one of the most overrated now. Because Parallel Future is extremely powerful, but I don't think that people quite consider the long-term impact of it. In the hands of an average person, I think this ability could end up being much more of a curse than a benefit. Just think about how long you spend doom scrolling on social media because you've developed a habit of always needing to be connected. That would 100% happen if you had the ability to look into the future. If you're bored, you'd always just be hopping in to fill some time, and then you'd be even more bored because all you see is you 10 seconds into the future still being bored. It's a vicious cycle of boredom. But it could also take a much more harmful turn into paranoia. I mean, if you had a guaranteed window into the future, you'd evolve to a point where you'd feel very naked and exposed whenever you are not using that power. So I'm going to come clean here. I, myself, cannot see into the future. So as a result, I'm pretty alright with going with the flow. But if I could, I'd probably become very addicted and paranoid about checking. Like say I'm about to cross the road. Oh no, quick, let's just have a bit of a parallel future just to check if everything's going to happen safely. And I would probably be like that with everything. Which sounds absurd, and no, it wouldn't be like that straight from the get-go, but with something so powerful, I just feel like it's human nature to develop an over-reliance on it. And at a certain stage, you may even cease to live in the present entirely, just always focused on the future until one day all you see is black, indicating that you are going to die within the next 10 seconds. It just doesn't sound as appealing as most Nen abilities. I mean, extremely powerful, yes, but it's sort of be careful what you wish for. The girl from York knew who has to kiss her target. I don't want to have to kiss a bunch of strangers. Right, so this is Instant Lover used by Baze, which means kiss in French. An especially awkward post-pandemic power because people are now less likely to let you randomly kiss them, even if you are some sort of gorgeous 2D woman. Although speaking of, if you were anything less than sex on legs of any gender, then this ability would be even harder to use without being charged for sexual assault. With that said, I would still prefer it to pregnancy and inserting myself into a corpse, so it's definitely not the worst. Hakaware, only because I am bad at math. You know, that's the funny thing, you don't need to be good at math. Because this ability, it does all of the mathematizing for you. This delightsome little creature does all of the calculations and works the glorious sorcery that is compound interest. Meanwhile, all you need to do is sit there and wait for your opponent to go bankrupt. Akaware itself is actually a mahjong term for a player whose points fall below 0 and thus immediately end the game. Now, Knuckle does use it with his unexpectedly amazing math skills, and he's at the point where he can see how much aura is invested and then calculate exactly how long it will take for an opponent to go bankrupt. Which is handy handy, but you don't need to do that. What you really need to do is have a bit of a thwack in the sack and let compound interest carry you to victory. So it's not the worst ability. In fact, it's not a bad ability. In fact, it's a really good ability, but a misunderstood ability. Pike. Do I need to explain more? You don't, but I will, because I am surprised that so few people said this one. I mean, this is a heart-soother that it makes my butt clench in phantom pain. Pike's ability is called Deluge d'amour, which makes it sound more like a romantic tryst than what it actually is, which in reality is more akin to taking a big, like really big and very detailed dump. In English, it's called love shower, and it allows Pike to rapidly excrete web from his spider butt. And honestly, it could be useful. The webs are really powerful, and I'm sure it would be handy for many circumstances, but I just, that's funny that I said but I just don't want to do that. The reason why I really enjoy Pike though, is because we don't often get to say this word, but Pike's cause of death was exsanguination, aka the removal of blood, which also happened to Karasu in Togashi's previous series, Yu Yu Hakusho, with that Karasu also bearing a weird resemblance to the One Piece Karasu, which came along much later, which is something that I've only just picked up on, so And speaking of, Nen ability to turn myself into jacket. So you've got the wrong series here, but I know that about 70% of you watching also watch Grand Line Review, so you know what this guy's talking about. This is referring to the Jake no Mi, a devil fruit whereby the user transforms into a jacket and then must be worn by someone, which is really interesting to examine in the context of Hunter x Hunter, because this really kind of useless power would be shockingly difficult to achieve with Nen. For all of the crazy, wacky crap that Nen can do, body manipulation is still extremely rare and costly to pull off, and the idea of morphing your body into a jacket would require a seriously powerful Nen veteran, like Tsubone, except she transforms into useful things like motorcycles and planes as opposed to clothing. Actually, you know, it's probably not even body manipulation, it's more like body transmutation, or maybe even body conjuration, because you have to turn into a substance, be it metal or fabric. Anyway, it's a crazy area and one that we still don't quite know enough about. Meanwhile, there are also some Nen abilities that make this video due to the fact that they would be dead weight in reality, such as Komugi's Gungi skills, which won't really help because it's a fictional game. Chrollo's skill Hunter was also cited many times and would be pretty rubbish in reality with no other Nen users. Then you've also got impossible conditions like Emperor Time needing Scarlet Eyes, or Benolinov's Battle Cantabile needing various bodily holes, like more than your standard amount of holes. It actually turns out that a massive amount of abilities are just completely dead weight with anyone but their originator, which makes stuff like Chitu's crossbow slightly more appealing, because many people cited this as the worst Nen ability, but hey, at least it can be used universally. But look, I think we found our winner pretty early on in this video, and we're going to give the award for worst Nen ability to use to Ikalgo's Living Dead Dolls.